This episode is brought to you in partnership with the wonderful Docket. Mums, founders, we have a lot of paperwork, a lot of admin to manage. Docket is the can't live without it app that streamlines all your admin into one place. Store all your important documents and policies, track your subscriptions and expenses, set up reminders for bills, and stop around £120 a month leaking from your household. Search Docket in your app store. That's DOQIT and the code UPS050 for your discounted subscription. That's UPS050. Thanks so much to Docket. Hello, I'm Caroline Marshall, and welcome to Bump to Business Owner, the podcast speaking to mums in business, you. I'll be in conversation with some of the most inspiring women and mothers in enterprise about their journey, how they created their successful businesses alongside raising their children, and what that looks like in work and family life. Welcome to today's episode of Bump to Business Owner. I am your host, Caroline Marshall, and today I'm welcoming Danielle Lauren. Today's guest is an accomplished creative force and now founder of a beautiful business that brings light and truth to one of the most misunderstood chapters of motherhood. Danielle Lauren is the founder and CEO of Way Too Honest, a brand that creates affirmation and support cards for new mums navigating the fourth trimester, also known as Matrescence. Backed by endorsements from Catherine Ryan, Lucy Jones, Zoe Blaski, and Dr. Ellie Cannon, and for every box sold, a donation goes to the Maternal Mental Health Alliance, helping to drive meaningful change in perinatal mental health. Prior to launching her business, Danielle was a powerhouse in the media and tech industries, working as VP of Story for Reese Witherspoon's Hello Sunshine, Innovation Ambassador at Warner Media, and Head of Content Strategy at CNN. She's spoken at global events from Harvard to TEDx with a deep focus on AI, Web3, and the future of storytelling. But as we'll hear today, it was Danielle's own journey through a devastating postpartum period and identity shift that fueled her desire to create Way Too Honest, rooted in compassion, creativity, and maternal honesty. Danielle, I mean, what a CV. That's quite intimidating. Can I just say that when I read it out, I'm like, wow, how do you get a career like that?
By working your ass off. And I think having to overcome a lot of imposter syndrome. And I think also hearing it, like, I think there's this really weird reconciliation of hearing that huge life that I had to the person I am today. It's sometimes like, I know I did it, but I can't believe I did it.
Yeah. And how did you start? How did you go into that? Where at school, were you always going to be that person to smash?
I think the thing is when you're a little girl, when you're young, specifically as women, no one tells you about what it is to be a producer, what it is to be a director, right? Because it's always about actors. And so I thought when I was younger, I wanted to be an actor because that's how you tell stories. And when I was kind of starting to pursue my acting career, I was in a workshop where you could choose between writing, directing, and acting. And I thought I would give a chance for directing. And I just fell in love with it. I fell in love with working with actors. I fell in love with finding truth in characters and bringing that to life. And so I actually kind of then was like, oh, this is fascinating. And so I started to build a career behind the camera. So started off in like community TV and making short films, and then slowly worked my way up the ladder. I went to film school. And when I left Australia, I'm Australian and South African, I was the executive producer for MTV Australia. So I ran the whole of Australia and New Zealand. I was like 29 years old.
So young.
Yeah, I think, for most of my life, my career has been my baby. It's the thing that I put my heart and my soul into. And I think because I've been so driven by passion for storytelling, it's been quite easy to become obsessed with my world. And then when I moved to the UK, as you mentioned, I found it a little bit tricky when I arrived here because I'd had all these amazing credentials in Australia, but they didn't quite translate. I'd go for interviews with the BBC or Channel 4 and I'd get really far in the interview stage, but because I didn't have like local references and credentials, it just kind of couldn't.
I guess
quite
network as well, because so much of it is about network, I imagine, especially in that industry.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so much about that. And so I kind of, as someone who's always been quite creative and quite innovative, I was like, okay, well, there must be go where other people don't know. So I became very familiar with social media and artificial intelligence and Web3. And so through that, I was kind of able to make my way back into the industry, but in a much more innovative space. So that's how I ended up, heading up content strategy and innovation for CNN International, and then got headhunted by our parent company to work with like big brands like Warner Media, so Warner Brothers and Cartoon Network and HBO. I spent a bit of time in New York working on like the launch of HBO Max, which was really exciting. And then post COVID, I got what I would consider just a dream job working with Reese Witherspoon's production company. Their whole mandate of Hello Sunshine is changing the narrative for women. And as someone who's been so passionate about making sure that women's stories are told authentically and with the complexity of what it is to be a woman, it was just amazing to be a part of an organization that aligned with my values and also make really good entertainment.
Wow. And that does sound correct. Was that in London you did that, or in New York?
I was based in London, but I was reporting into LA, so I spent a bit of time in LA. And the Hello Sunshine office is exactly as you can imagine. It's magnificent. It's like walking into a fairy tale where everything's organized by the Home Edit, because Home Edit is part of the Hello Sunshine team. So it's beautiful, and there are books on the wall, and they're like little reading nooks, and delicious, like, you can eat seaweed in the kitchen, and it's like, imagine like the perfect environment for women.
Yeah.
That. And I think what's so incredible about the women who work there, I kind of describe it as being with the Olympians of creativity. You're in an environment of women where it's not about competition. It's actually about really, there's no time for that. It's all about making sure that we're telling amazing stories, serving the audience, and again, being true to that North Star about changing the narrative for women. And again, I think it just attracts a certain type of caliber of person. And so it was just such an honor to be part of such a beautiful organization.
I love that. And if it's set up for women, then you are going to remove that competition, because we're not meant to be competitive in that sense. That was created in workplaces where there weren't enough space for us, and there was competition to be the one woman there, kind of thing.
Absolutely. And I think it's also a sense of self. I think, when you feel confident, you don't really feel the need to pull the ladder up behind you. I think there either are leaders who really feel like they can foster and encourage and nurture talent, or there are leaders who are like, I got here and I fought my way, and you're going to fight your way.
Yes, you've got to do it. Like, I think there's mothers like that as well. I do actually believe there's mothers who are like, well, you just have to get on with it like we do. And it's a similar thing when there's the ones who are like, no, go change it because it was shit now when it's shit.
Yeah.
It was shit then.
And I'd like to think that, the world of evolution means that we're constantly improving things. Like, if you've ever been, and I'm sure all of us have been in environments where I guess, we've potential. I remember I had a female boss who was extremely competitive and extremely cruel to women on staff, including myself. And I just never quite understood it, because because I don't think that we win unless everyone's kind of winning. And so for me, my greatest joy is actually watching my team, especially if I'm managing people, succeed. Like, I'm winning if you're winning. Like, if you're doing a good job, then I'm doing a good job. And so that's just kind of my general life philosophy. I think helping people fulfill their potential is just like that. I think that's kind of one of my purposes here, is just to allow people to kind of, step into their own space and feel powerful. And I think we should all be doing that. I mean, what a world we would live in if we were just allowing people to just fulfill the best version of themselves.
And so motherhood, like you said, you smashed your career. You worked hard, hustled, did amazing things. Did you think when you were going to become a mum, I've got this, I've done all of this, I can handle being a mum? What was that? Was there an element of humbling for you in that? I think there is for everyone.
I had no idea. I had no idea what motherhood. I just, you can't get it until you get it. Like, it's the most ultimate lived experience. And I describe it to people like, imagine reading a driver's manual, and then the difference between reading a manual and then getting behind the car is a completely different experience. Like, suddenly there's ongoing.
I feel like that's driving for me, full stop. So yeah, I get that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so lived. And, even though I think we could do a much better job of starting to explain to women before they become mothers what does lie ahead. Like, I think we do a huge disservice to women about not having language around that. But
in a way that's not like, wait till you see, and then you've got the young ones going, it's not going to happen to me, and it's like this repeat narrative just doesn't work, does it?
Like, what is that about? Like, I just think I just kind of got a bit exhausted from my own internal voice that was like, why did nobody tell me this? Or other women saying, why did nobody tell me this? And there's so much secrecy around it. And so and that just kind of annoys me because again, I don't think that benefits anyone. But I do think a lot of my images of what it was to be a mother came from books, it came from movies, and it was very romantic. It was very, I had this vision of me in a coffee shop dressed in pastels with my baby in the boob and me like sipping a cappuccino in the sun and just thinking about how glorious my life is, and I am now one with the universe because I've given birth and suddenly I understand the meaning of life. Like, it's this very 1950s romantic version of what it is to be a mother, but that isn't so far from the actual realities that you face every single day. You're going through a complete life transformation, and I think, and again, I don't completely blame myself, but I do feel such annoyance that I didn't recognize that was what other women were experiencing when I was in the workplace, when mums would go off on maternity leave and come back. And I think we'd all kind of do that tokenistic, how are you? How's it going? Can I see a picture of your baby? Oh my God, so cute. Great. Now let's pretend it hasn't existed. And
let's pretend for the future you're not stressed. Yeah, let's pretend.
I think there's this kind of the expectation of women to have to divide that kind of severance between being a mum and being a working person, and there's no kind of merging. And I think there's, again, tokenism around it where people kind of pretend that they care, but actually they just want you to kind of get on with your job. And I do think I was slightly guilty of that, not because in any malice or any kind of cruelty, but I just couldn't comprehend how life altering becoming a mother is, and that as soon as a woman becomes a mother, it's that in her head she's a mother when she's at work, she's a mother when she's on transport, she's a mother, she's no longer just the previous person of herself. And I think it's so weird for women when you return back into a work environment that you're expected to be exactly who you were before, and you're not. And so I think that's what I think for me the biggest like mind-blowing thing about becoming a mother is the fact that we go through a huge identity change, and no one talks about that. No one says when you become a mother, your entire identity is going to be different. And you're not going to be the person you were before. Parts of her will find themselves back again, but actually parts of you are going to die. And you might need to take time to grieve that and to understand that. And if we had language again or structure around helping women find their identity in motherhood, like how beautiful would it be to kind of help women go, okay, your life is different, you are different, but how do I empower you in these moments to actually, again, fulfill your potential and feel strong and feel like yourself and have that kind of sense of nurture? I just think that, again, we do such an injustice to women that we don't do that by not saying, by the way, your identity is going to change on the day your child is born. You two are going to be reborn, and you're going to have to take time to discover her. And it's just like your baby. It's a process. Some people get there faster than others, but you will reclaim you plus a bit more and a bit extra. But I just think
It's amazing once you're on the other side of it. And I think there's that other point, because it is, like you said, it's having that structure. I really liked that and that way of saying it. Because if you say to a pre-mum, oh, you're going to change, she'll be like, no, I won't. I'm still going to do this. You can't say it like that, because she'll want to be the one who's seen the celebrity, who's back, who's just seeing the not the real story, but the visual, isn't it? They'll be seeing, I don't know, a celebrity who's up on stage 3 months later, and they're like, well, they're fine. And it's like, they're not.
yeah.
That's not the whole picture. That's the external piece.
Yes, but and at the same time, I think everyone finds their own way of coping with that.
Exactly.
You
I
know?
mean, I got married 4 months after mine, so I obviously had an external wall on me, but I was not feeling that internally.
Yeah, but I also do think that there are, I recently met someone who was one of those celebrity mothers who did go back to work, and actually it was a slight conflict for her, but she was so grateful so early on that she could reclaim her identity. And it wasn't, I don't think it was a mask. It was more, she has a really supportive partner, and he was able to hold more of the domestic responsibility. He wanted to hold more of the domestic responsibilities. And I think she felt that there was that kind of judgment of like, shouldn't you be broken because you've returned back to work at 3 months? Shouldn't you not win? And I think this is constantly the frustration about being, 21st century woman. No matter what you do, you're doing it wrong. Go back to work, you're doing it wrong. You're staying at home, you're doing it wrong. You're finding it hard, you're doing it wrong. You're finding it easy, you're doing it wrong. Your body looks great, you're doing it wrong. Your body looks bad, every single message I think women are given from the moment we're born to the moment we die is we're doing it wrong. And I think we experience it so much in motherhood because there's so much judgment. And so I really I think very compassionately about every single mother who is doing the best that she can with what she has and what she needs. And that if the thing you needed to do was go back to work after 3 months, that's what you needed to do. If you need to go back after 3 years, that's what you needed to do. If you never wanted to go, like, and I think it's about honoring that everyone finds their identity in their own way, and for us to just be kind, because the society is giving women enough messaging that's saying you're fucking this up.
Yeah.
Society's telling you whatever you're doing is wrong. And I think what we shouldn't be doing as mothers is looking towards other women and going, I wouldn't be doing that if I were you. That doesn't help. Like, I think there has to be a sisterhood and an allyship that says, I may not make the same decisions as you, but I trust you as a mother and as an individual and person to be making the best decisions for you and your family. Because if you're okay, your child's okay. And that's also really important.
But it's also allowing for mistakes as well. I mean, we can all think we've not made the right choices, but being like, you might not be making the right choice, but that's you'll grieve that, learn that, and that's part of the process, because we all do it in some way. And I think there's honoring that you trust you're making the right choice, but also allowing for mistakes. So we're all doing this for the first time. If we're allowed to make mistakes in a first job, can we do this in motherhood as well?
Absolutely.
And just apologize to our kids for messing them up.
Our kids are also learning to do it for the first time, and they don't know. And no one, it's so easy to have like retrospective judgment, right? It's so easy to should have, but like, I'm always trusting the people making the best decision they can in the moment that they can. And even if it doesn't turn out to be, with the knowledge they have, the right one for them. Again, it's just having compassion when, you are making those decisions and you don't know, and the right to change your mind.
The right to change your mind. I love that one, especially for mothers. They need that.
I know. I don't think my husband likes my right to change. He's like, but I'm pretty sure. No, I changed my mind. It's okay. You're allowed to be a contradiction. You're allowed to, because we're all still working it out. Complex compassion allows contradictions to be together, I think, where you can be, I can feel both delighted by motherhood and scared about motherhood. I can absolutely love my life and hate it at the same time. And those two contradictions can sit together. And I think it's being able to allow that, because we live in such a binary world. I think, all of us who live in 2025 are very aware of how more binary and separate and isolating the world is becoming. And I think the solution is really that merging of saying, actually, I can hold two things at once, even if they seem like contradictions, but they're not. I can still value this and something that seems opposite, and actually bring them together, because again, human beings are much more complex. And I think us coming to terms with those kind of dichotomy of experiences and feelings is part of finding oneself in the world.
It's so true, because then if you can have compassion, that you can have compassion for people that have real opposite views to you that you don't agree with, but you can kind of understand why they might have that opinion, sort of thing. So
yeah, absolutely.
I love that. And so when you became a mother, were you working? Had you gone self-employed? How was your maternity leave? What was that?
Maternity leave, what's that?
Did you take any?
No, absolutely no. Before I became a mum, I was still working for Alice Sunshine. I was on a contract. So my contract was coming to an end, and we were starting to talk about potentially what would be next. And at that point, I was like, actually, I've got something to tell you. I'm pregnant. And so I decided to actually go back to Australia to have my son.
Okay.
So when I was 6 months pregnant, I flew back to Australia with my husband. He joined me for a couple of weeks so I could kind of set up, and then he had to come back to the UK to work. So I was in Australia for 6 months. And so as a contractor and a freelancer, I didn't have any maternity pay or leave.
Oh, wow.
It was just really my own time. And I guess being an Australian living in the UK, in my situation, I wasn't allowed any money because I'm still just an Australian here. So I got no money from the government here, but I also couldn't access any Australian money, which is quite decent, because I hadn't been living there for 2 years. So I got absolutely no help. And I didn't have anyone kind of proper, So yeah, I wasn't on any timeline. It's not like I had a job I had to go back to, but I also had a lot of financial anxiety and fear, because throughout my whole life I'd worked and I was used to working and having that kind of financial freedom. Hate relying on my husband. I hate it. It's like it annoys me to the core, because I always say to my partner, I want to be with you because I want to be, not because I have to be.
I have the the same phrase as well. I just have, the world's not set up for us not to have financial freedom. That's my belief, even for whatever it is. And if the world's not set up, then I have to be financially independent. That's the way it works, even if I am doing more of the school runs and carried the children and birthed them. But yeah, no, same phrase. I'm with you there.
Yeah, well, and also for me, it's a confirmation to my husband of why I turn up every day. Like I
Yeah,
wouldn't, like I turn up because I want
you
to.
want to.
I want to, not because I'm like, oh my God, if I can't leave you because you're the thing that's keeping me alive and existing in the world. I don't think for us as a couple that would work, and for me and my personality. But yeah, I think my challenge post, I didn't know how I was going to be, and I just tried to tell myself that I was aware that I didn't know, and I would be ready to return back to work when I was ready to turn back to work, whether that was 3 months, 1 year, 5 years, etc. I just trusted whatever that instinct was going to be. But I think the thing that I wasn't quite prepared for was how severe I ended up having quite severe pre and postnatal depression and anxiety. And there was absolutely no way that I was mentally able to turn up to function for a job when I was not okay. And actually, when my son was about 2 months, I got the opportunity. Copenhagen Television Festival invited me to be a speaker, and I was in a pretty dark place in February, but I was pretty confident come August that I would not be in a dark place, and so I said yes, and it just hung over me for months and months and months. This like fear of having to turn up on a stage, because the thing about this festival, Jesse Armstrong, who created Succession, was speaking there. People created The Good Fight, some of my like amazing documentary makers, and you get to hang out with the speakers, you get to have dinner with them. It's just like for me, it's just the most amazing. The year before I was invited to speak, and David Bernard, who did The White Lotus, was there. And so,
Wow.
worked my whole life to get an opportunity to sit at the table with these esteemed people. And I didn't want to deny myself that because I became a mom. But it wasn't, I was like, it took me all my strength and soul to get up on a stage in August when my son was 7 months old. I was really not okay. And I'm giving a lecture about creativity and artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
Because I wanted to honor my previous self. It took me out of commission for a while because of what it took for me to get up on that stage. And I think it's that thing that, a couple of months later, I was asked to speak in Sweden, and I remember a woman who was pregnant came up to me and she's like, "Oh my God, you're so inspiring," because I brought my son with me. He hung out backstage with one of the women in Sweden so I could give my talk. She's like, "Oh my God, you're so inspiring. Look at you. Look, you've got your baby." And I was like, please do not use me as a reference point, because actually you don't know what it's taken for me to get here and how much it's costing me psychologically to be here, because I'm really not okay. Like I'm doing this because I'm trying to keep that previous part of myself alive, but I'm not. Don't use me as your poster child, because you're not actually getting the full picture of what I'm like. Because I think you can look at my life on Instagram or on TikTok, or see me giving a keynote at a prolific film festival and go, "Oh my God, she got it, she's nailed it, look at her with her looking pretty on stage and being all profound with a baby. Oh my God." That is 1% of what the reality is. They're not seeing the mental torture that happens beforehand, and then the absolute devastation, exhaustion afterwards because of what I had to muster up to turn up. And so I just want to be honest about that. And my whole thing is about being honest, because I think we look to these false martyrs. We see celebrities but you're not seeing them bursting out in tears in bathrooms. You're not seeing the house cleaners and the staff that are making it a reality. You're not seeing the quiet confessionals that they're having with their girlfriends. Like, it's all an illusion, because no one gets into motherhood without being deeply impacted and finding it ridiculously hard.
Yeah.
And so I just really want to crack that a little bit, because I think when we're honest, we're able to provide resources. We create space for other people to be honest with themselves and with us, and then we're able to kind of make sure that we provide proper support for people. But the first thing is, it's like Alcoholics Anonymous. You can't get help until you admit that there's a problem.
Yes, and that takes time sometimes in early motherhood, just for you to get there. You've got to go through that phase sometimes. No, thank you for sharing that, because I relate to so much of that. And we started this podcast because it's not about we can't just create these businesses and look like mums who are smashing it. Is that this is the honest truth of how what we face, and such a reality. And you struggled with your health. Was it when you moved to Australia in your pregnancy? Do you think that impacted you, and being away from your husband, and was that the start of it, and was the work looming over it? Do you think it kept that coming, basically?
Yeah, I think for me, look, I'd always had anxiety about becoming a mum because I fucking loved my life.
Yeah.
I like, I love my life. I had a huge, exciting career that I'd worked so hard for. I traveled around the world, I was meeting people of influence. I loved it. I worked for it. But there was always that little ticking time bomb, which is like, especially I was heading towards 40. I had my son when I was 40. But there's like, if you don't do it, if you nail it, you may never have a child. And but if I could have, I would have loved to give myself another 20 years. Like I wasn't quite ready to give up on this beautiful life I'd worked so hard for. And at the same time, I had to make a huge life decision at a time where maybe I wasn't quite ready to make it. And I'd seen it. I mean, I'd seen the judgment in the workplace. I'd seen the judgment in my industry for women. I mean, I feel it now that I've become a mother. Undeniably, I've seen it's been devastating for me to see people I've worked with fall into the imagined trap that I thought, which is, well, now that you're a mom, you probably can't do this job, or you're not capable of it. It's just, I mean, yeah,
I think we've all seen it, no matter what industry. It's crazy.
yeah, I went to a Matrescence festival last year, and actually one of the women said she told a story about how she told her office that she was having a baby, and she was in the bathroom that afternoon, and she heard two colleagues come in, and one of the women said to the other, I thought she was a bit more ambitious than that. And I think
And then we
by
get judged for not having babies as well. You hear it across the newspapers that we're not having them, and then you hear
yeah,
that. Oh my
but
goodness.
two women saying that about another woman, and I think that is the reality. I mean, I'd heard it. I heard it in the environments that I'd been in, and I'd seen how other women who were mothers were being treated. So I was anxious because I loved my life and I wanted to continue to have a big, bold life. And then I think it didn't help the fact that I was in Australia, my husband was away, and I think I started to get worried that my son was going to come early, and then I was going to have to go through it alone. And I think no one quite, again, you don't know what you don't know. And I think the third trimester is such a tricky one. You're not sleeping, everything's uncomfortable, you're more.
And everyone just says, wait till the baby comes. And you're like, I'm so uncomfortable right now. Mine was 10 days overdue. So I was so uncomfortable by the end. And I'm like, really? I'm not sleeping.
Yeah, not, you can't bank it either. It's not
Yeah,
like
no, yeah.
I'm going to sleep for 28 hours and then, 3 months in, just can call you. Like, that's not really how sleep works. So I was feeling quite anxious, and it was funny when I met my obstetrician for the first time. Like, I think I came up with this because my way of dealing with anxiety is preparation, and so I just like, I prepared. I watched all the too many TikTok videos. I think there's danger in knowing too much, and so I remember meeting up with my obstetrician for the first time, and he's like, "Where getting these questions from?" Because they were so random, because I'd found one person on TikTok who talked about one thing sometime, and I was like, is that going to happen to me? And and my whole thing was just about being prepared. What ended up happening when my husband was there, because, and again, we don't it makes sense now, but I didn't realize it at the time. As you get closer and closer to the birth date, actually, if you're someone who is having anxiety, it's only going to get worse and worse and worse as you get closer to the date. And everyone around you is going, oh my God, you must be so excited. This is so wonderful. How are you feeling? So you're having fear and anxiety. Then everyone around you is telling you should be excited and this is amazing. And you're like, what you're telling me and how I'm feeling is just so utterly different. And then you start to go, well, there's clearly something wrong with me, or there's something wrong about this experience, etc. So that kind of started to happen. And then when I was getting, and because I was trying to get prepared for the birth date, I suggested to my husband we go into a tour of the hospital so that I could it wasn't going to be the first time when I turned up what it was going to be like. And actually that ended up giving me like a PTSD reaction. I turned up in the hospital and I was like, I can't do this. I don't want to do this. I can't do this. I don't want to do this. And I started to go into a huge panic. And I basically had felt like I'd signed myself up for a death warrant, that I was like, I'm going to this hospital to die, like this, and not because I thought I was going to die in childbirth. I was like, I'm going to die. And
That's
Why?
an issue with hospitals that like you often get called. Like I used to work in one, and I knew someone at the front desk, and he'd never call the pregnant women patients. He'd call them women or something like that, because he's like, if you
Mm,
call them a patient, they think they're sick, and they're
mm.
not sick. They're pregnant, and that is an issue with hospitals. A lot of people have only gone in them when they've seen someone die, and then they have a baby. It makes sense. It's psychological.
And I think it was making the reality of what was coming ahead much clearer to me. And, I think we don't like to think. I became really, really suicidal really, really quickly. I just was, after we left, I just was like, no, I don't want to do this. Like, I was like, I want to get off the ride. I want to get off the roller coaster. I can't do this anymore. I don't want to do this. And we don't like to think of women with these huge, beautiful bellies, 37 weeks pregnant, wanting to take their own life. But actually,
Mm.
it's really common. And again, we don't talk about it because we as a society, because it goes against nature. Why would we, that doesn't seem, we can't mentally reconcile the beauty of a woman with a huge belly about to have a baby wanting to not be here anymore and taking her own life and the life of her child. That doesn't seem possible as a mental space, but that's what happened to me. I mean, it was horrific. And I think also I also have to live with that was a decision that I was going to make that could have not only just impacted my life, but the life of my son, and
Yeah.
what that means and the devastation of that, and coming to terms with that. And all I can do is just bring that person, me, such compassion, because I was in such extreme pain. I was in such extreme fear. I was in such extreme anxiety that I was just looking to not feel what I was feeling. And this was the only thing that made sense for me to get rid of that pain, even though it was not necessarily a rational thing. And the best thing about it was because because it was such an emergency situation, the entire birth experience completely changed for me. I ended up getting amazing support from the perinatal mental health team in Australia, and they changed the hospital I was going to give birth in. They changed the date because I had a C-section. They changed the date. They changed the team. Everything about my birth experience. They put me on antidepressants 2 weeks before my son was, everything. So when I actually gave birth, the actual day itself was beautiful and wonderful and amazing and incredible. And I was so high on drugs, it was the best. Um, but because one of the things that the perinatal mental health team did was everyone who walked into my room was briefed about my mental health, which meant that no one came in and went, "Oh my God, how are you feeling? Oh my God, you're a mom. That must be so amazing." That's not what they did. They all came in quietly, and they would check in on me and "How are you doing today? Do you need anything? How can we help you?" And so I was met with respect of where I was, as opposed to what I think maybe some other mothers experience. And because I was held during that, and then the perinatal team looked after me for the next 3 months before I came back to the UK. And
That's
I
amazing.
and I honestly do not think I'd be alive today if it wasn't for those women. And I don't know what it's like to give birth in the UK, but me going to Australia saved my life, undoubtedly. And having been through the perinatal mental health system here in the UK, when I returned, I don't know if I would have been alive if I gave birth in the UK. And that really upsets me as a mother, because I just think women deserve better.
Yeah, and thank you for the work you do donating money to the MHA, because I know them, and it's needed in this country. And I'm so sorry you went through that, but so thank you for sharing. And it's just, I'm so pleased you got that support, because
Thank you.
depending where you are in this country, you can get lost. And I had that experience with my PTSD after the second son, and luckily it was okay, but I did get lost, and you shouldn't get lost in the system. So let's use your story as a flagship to do better in this country. And I'm glad you're sharing that to make awareness in this country for that. And
Thank you.
so you came back 3 months later. What also helped you starting to heal from that? Did you feel a lot better? I mean, 3 months is still early, really early on, isn't it? Still very hormonal driven.
Yeah.
What other things helped you start to heal?
I mean, I wasn't seen by a perinatal psychologist for at least 9 months after I returned back, which is a
Mm.
long time when you're in a really dark place.
When you're at risk, yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, I would just say in general that first year was pretty dark for me. And I just remember saying, if I can get through this, there has to be purpose to this. I felt so awful, and I was like, I cannot have other women feel how I feel. I'm so lucky. I've got an amazing husband. I'm educated, I'm resourced, I speak English as a first language. I'm white, which unfortunately shouldn't be a factor, but it is. And I'm like, I'm in the deepest, darkest hole. So what about women who are more vulnerable than me, who can't even begin to navigate a system that's working against them? And I was like, if I can get through this, I have to do something for them. Like, this is just, as a feminist, as a woman, and as a mother, I was like, this just is wrong. And as a justice seeker, I was like, I have to do something. And so as a storyteller, I just, in the darkness and the confusion, I just started writing. I just started writing things that I thought were helpful, things that I thought were meaningful. If anyone said something that actually landed, I would write it down, or experiences or my own internal dialogue when like random strangers would say stupid things to me on the street. I would like, which they love to do. I don't know you, never going to see you again, but thank you for your opinion about how I should raise my kid. I love that. Thanks. So I just kind of wrote down my internal retorts to that. And I thought I was going to write a book, and I started writing a book, and I got halfway through writing a book, and I kind of kept getting drawn back to those original words that I had written that were kind of inspiring the chapters. And I think two things came to mind, which is one, a mum doesn't have time to read a book. Like a new mum, like you can't finish a thought. People gave me so many books, I haven't read them. I just don't have headspace or capacity. And also,
And
I,
it's very overwhelming. I remember someone gave me Mother Pucker's book, and I love Mother Pucker, but
yeah, she's
I
amazing.
wasn't in a space. When you're not in a space as well, I'm not in a space to read. I still haven't read that book to this day, so no offense to her. But it is that I got given it as such an overwhelming time of pregnancy. I was like, I can't read it.
Yeah. Yeah, you can't. And yeah, absolutely. And the other thing is, I realize you don't need 10 chapters to explain something simple. So like, in my way to honest cards, there's a card that says, I don't know why we keep telling women it takes a village when there isn't one. Like, I don't need 20 pages to extrapolate that. Any woman who doesn't feel like she has a village will get that. And so for me, I was like, okay, I kept kind of coming back to these quotes or these sayings. I was like, I think there's something here that I think that in and of itself could be a powerful way to tell a story. So I was like, actually, forget the book. I mean, maybe in the future that will come to life. It's there. But I was like, let me lean into another way of storytelling. And I think, when you're a storyteller, you don't choose your format. You don't choose your platform. Like for me, I've directed plays at the Sydney Opera House because it needed to be a play. I make an Instagram reel because it needs to be a reel. I write a one-line tweet because it's, you don't choose your stories, and you don't choose the format. And there's never in my life that I think I would be making, affirmation support cards for people. But for me, it's another form of storytelling, and it's an innovative way of telling a story. And again, meeting my audience, which are new moms, in a way that's actually going to be helpful for them, because my job this year is to be of service to new moms.
And it's what you keep saying you're a storyteller, and so that's when you say you've gone through all this transition. Ultimately, what has stayed with you is what you do. That's you. You're a storyteller. So I love that, because while we it can be scary with all the change, it's you had that faith. Everything you are is still there with your storytelling as well. And so, how did it look like launching Way Too Honest and getting okay? Once you've decided I'm going to do this, how did that look?
Yeah. Well, firstly, trying to find a business name is really hard because I would like come up with these really great names, and then I would Google it, and then it's already been taken. The URL's been taken. Because I think specifically mum influencers have been around for a while. So I was just like, and it's funny because even when I did Way Too Honest, and I kind of landed on that because I felt that's what I was doing. Only a few months later, after I kind of finished my branding, did I find out there was an influencer with a similar name, which is, I think it's called Honest Mom, or I'm not quite sure, but
Yeah,
it's like, no, no,
it's
no,
fine. It's different.
it's fine, it's different. So look, I have to admit, so the first thing that I did was I set up a group with some girlfriends who I really trust, who have a variety of different skill sets. Friend who's a lawyer, friend who's a consultant, a friend who's a PT, a friend who's a producer, a women who I had kind of been on the journey with me as a mom. And I have this WhatsApp group, which is called Danielle's Cheerleader and Advice Group. And because I think when you're working on your own, when you're launching a business, it's really, really hard. And sometimes I would just need someone else to bounce an idea off of. And instead of having to like try, I've got this group with 10 women that I'll put in a card and go, does this look right? Does this make sense or whatever? And at least one or two will reply. So I kind of get instant. So they're like my trust, my little board. But even a couple of weeks before I kind of launched, I was like, this is just a really bad idea. Like, what am I doing? Like, I had one of those like wobbles where I was like, and I think the other thing is when I've worked as a TV producer, my biggest cost is my time. So I'm coming up with a TV show idea. It's just me sitting in front of my computer doing research and writing. When you're dealing with a physical product, you have to put money down. So not only are you investing yourself and your time,
It's your
you
money.
your money. And I know it's like so obvious, but like for me to pay, having not worked for a year and a half, having, living off my savings to then go, you know what I'm going to do? I'm actually going to put more money into something, a brand new business that I've never done before. And the terrifying experience of pressing the submit button on my international banking, going, okay, let's do this. And having to learn everything. I mean, the here's a
Oh,
box.
there they are. Love it.
But I designed the box. I've never done box design before. I'm having to learn about paper, having to learn about import and export tax, having to learn about graphic design, having to learn, a web design, social media. Like I am the
Amazing.
only person in my company. No one else is being paid except for the printer because I just don't have a big enough printer at home. But I am it. I'm the intern to the CEO and everything kind of in between. And so, which has been such a huge learning curve. But yeah, I mean, it's amazing. And I think for me, one of the most phenomenal gifts actually has been that to say thank you to the people who helped me on my journey. I sent a couple of boxes to Australia to the perinatal mental health team that were of service to me. And I got the most magnificent email back from one of the women who, who was only amazed that I'd been able to do that in such a short period of time, but actually she's starting to use the cards in practice. So there are other women who are sitting on the same couch that I would have sat in 2 years ago thinking I don't want to live anymore, who are now holding my cards in their hands and using those as a form of therapy to help have difficult discussions, and to in such a short period of time know that I'm actually having direct impact on people who were in the dark place that I was is just the most mind-blowing gift. And I know because of what I've experienced, and I guess the reason why I'm so driven by this is because of what I've gone through. I know that this box in the right hand of the right woman can save her life. I know it in my heart of hearts because I know what you need to hear when you're not okay. And that for me is kind of my North Star, is just, I don't know who needs to hear what's in this box, but I swear there's a woman out there who's going to just read the right thing that's going to make her live to tomorrow. And that's why I feel so mission driven.
Gosh, you give me goosebumps that. And it is, wow, it is just incredible what you've done. And I remember that you are also very open, and this is the challenge, especially, when you're not taking a founder life, you're not taking money. You said only person that gets paid is the printer. You're doing everything. It's a shot in the dark, although it's going to help people, which is, worth everything. How do you manage that? And do you get the mum guilt, as what you're talking about, with also putting your child in daycare, feeling like you don't have to, feeling like you do have to get anything done? How does your world look as a founder still? Is two, your son is two? Is
Yeah,
that
my
right?
son's too. Yeah.
Son's two. Yeah. So what does it look like? And do you still feel that guilt, or at a point where you're like, see ya, I'm off to work now because I've got to that point?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah, my son at the moment, we have a nanny who
Mm.
comes 4 days a week, so he's not in childcare. So I guess the nice thing about my business is it does allow me to kind of pop into his life quite easily.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah.
and we found what I would just describe as the Mary Poppins of nanny. Her name's Angelina. She's just the most kind, smart, compassionate, fun, creative human. I could not think of her. I many times think she's a better parent than I am because she comes in all like fresh with ideas. And my son's living his bougiest life. He's having baby
Yeah.
chinos and croissants and going to the V&A. Like he's living the really best life. And so I know.
When your kid demands a baby chino, that's when you start questioning who you're raising. That is when you're in a car and they're like, I need a baby chino. Like, who are? What am I raising?
I know, I know. Absolutely, yeah. No, he's pretty good, and we're very. Again, I'm very, having grown up, like I grew up in South Africa before we moved to Australia, and I'm very aware of people who literally don't have food to eat. Growing up witnessing extreme poverty and injustice. I'm very much conscious of how do I raise a child in in London where, you've got two great middle class parents who can
Yeah.
buy baby chinos without having to think too much about it. And it's something I think a lot about, as he gets older, how do I give him an understanding of the world and privilege, and also with the responsibility that comes with privilege, which I really do think is helping other people. And so, he's two. I am not quite ready. I don't think he's quite ready yet to be
No, it's
volunteering
hard.
food kitchens and homeless shelters just yet. But that for me is
Yeah.
something that's really important, is how do I show him a world beyond his little bubble? Right now, whilst he's so young, he should be having his best life. He should
Oh
be
yeah.
having fun, he should be playing, he should be giggling, he should be making puppet show, he should be doing all those things. And as he gets older, it's about having that balance. Like, how do I make him a good citizen? How do I make him a good person? And so where that balance is with my workload is, my business is still very, very early. And, even though I ideally wanted to have, on Mondays I do this, on Tuesdays I do this, and a kind of like set structure, the reality is I'm constantly having to just move it's like Tetris of like trying to have to move the priorities. Like, well, if I make this day that, blah blah, but that's the only day in which that person can meet, well, that's just not going to work. So I think it's having a degree of flexibility. And I think the hard thing about being ambitious, and I'm sure you can relate to this, is you want to do everything as quickly as possible and want to be as big. Like, my to-do list is so huge, and so I have to kind of just piece it back and go, what's the most important thing that I can do right now? What's the most, what needs to happen? There's the must happen, then would like to happen, and then there's like,
That's a good hack there, because it is. I think motherhood actually gives you that beautiful thing of prioritizing, because you can easily lose yourself going into too much and doing everything, and you just can't.
No, and it's hard because I think my frustration in entrepreneurship is not being able to move quick enough, but also my brain hasn't been capable of doing that. And I think that's been part of the frustration of going through this matrescence, is just like, I describe my brain like when you're trying to start the car and it's not turning on, and you're like, oh, but you're a Ferrari, you're meant to be like zooming, but it's like not even, I can't even get you into first gear. And my brain's been like that for most of the year and a half, and I'm only starting to get back at that part that I feel was lost, because my brain was going through such a huge neurological adjustment.
And that's a way to talk about it. You've nailed it there. It's like, it's not just about telling people they're going to change, but it's understanding the science behind it so everyone can respect it. Because now I've done it. I got to 18 months before I got pregnant again. So now I can see how ridiculous my hormones were everywhere, getting pregnant the second time. But then, yeah, when I got to 3, I think I was like, oh gosh, this is what Caroline's like now. That's good. You start to suddenly realize, I think it's 3, you're really like, okay, this is me.
Yeah, yeah. And I was like, why? No, no, didn't matter how many coffees I was having, it was just not
No.
turning on. And I'm like, and it was so frustrating because I'm like, my brain has always been my best asset. And I'm like, why are you not doing the thing that I know you do well? But I was in a place of recovery. I'm still in a place of recovery. And I think even this like misunderstanding about, maternal mental health. I think people only have such a short patience. You're like, or you can only struggle postpartum for 3 months or 6 months or a year or 2 years maximum, but don't you dare say you've got postnatal depression any time longer than that. Where actually, I'm still in recovery. I'm much, much better than I was. I'm much more capable. I am reclaiming a life that I love and I'm proud of, but that doesn't mean I don't have days where I'm like, nope, I cannot do today. I just want to lie in bed and watch Netflix and escape in the world. Like, and it's about having patience and kindness for myself, going, sometimes you can climb the mountain and sometimes you just gotta sit on your butt and light a fire and put some marshmallows in there and just wait till you're ready to get back up again, and you get back up again. But it's okay to not be okay all the time.
Danielle, that's really hit me, because I actually said this to my dad last year. He helps me with finances in the business. That the year before and before that, I had days where I just didn't want to go anywhere and just wanted to be on the sofa. And it was only last year I thought, maybe I can't build a business because that's some days I just want to do that. And then last year I came out of it fully, other than obviously if I'm sick, the normal stuff, or, and also, period G, whatever is going on. But I was told we almost lost our second son, and I was told PTSD comes around 12 weeks after, and that was a load of shit, let's just say, because it was 2 years later I actually got the help I needed. But when I did the research into it and how PTSD can actually transpire, and I'm also like, when you're a mum and you've got all the hormones, I think that messes up with everything anyway. So I'm so glad you're recognizing those days where you do need to sit on the sofa if you've gone through a mentally
so
mental health
hard. It's
period.
so hard because we feel like we shouldn't. We're like, because again, we live in a society that misunderstands productivity. It's like, I'm
Mm.
only of value if I'm being productive. I'm only of value if I'm working on my business. I'm only of value. And so when we're not doing that, then we don't feel like we're of value. And I find it really, really, really hard to trust myself and go, you know what? There's no point you sitting in front of your computer today because you're not going to do anything as well. But I still am not in a place where I can opt into relaxing and actually relax.
Yeah.
Like, I'll slow down a bit, but I'm like, should be doing, must be doing. Why can't you do it? And the noises will kind of, and I look forward to getting better at it, but I'm still not at a place where I'm like, yeah, you know what, screw it. Yeah, I've worked really hard. I've worked evenings, I've worked weekends, I've been doing back to back. You know what? Yeah, today's the day where I just become one with law and order, and it's totally fine. Like, it's just, that's not, but it's a work in progress. It's a work, it's a
Yeah, and it's about making the small steps. I always say no one goes runs a marathon. You've got to do couch to 5K first. And it works the same the other way with rest or meditation, I think, with all of that, because I do that. And people are like, oh, I sat there for 15 minutes and couldn't do it. And I'm like, maybe you should start with two. Like things like that. It's like you can't just go from a huge like career productivity person like you were and then be like, oh, I'm just going to rest. And that it just doesn't work that way.
I think again, like, I mean, again, I will always say this, I have the most amazing husband and amazing partner, but I also find it really difficult to rest when I know my husband's in the office working and my nanny's looking after my child. And so
Yeah.
I'm like, well, everyone around me is being productive. Everyone else around me is doing so. What right do I have to go today? I'm just going to stay at home and become one with the couch. Like,
Yeah.
and again, being able to, yeah, it's being able to show myself kindness, which I'm doing imperfectly. I wish I could say to you, oh my God, yeah, I just own it because I'm unapologetic about relax. That's not where I'm at today, but I know that is a right. Like, I have
Yeah.
the right to rest. We all have the right to rest. Like, that's reasonable. And also knowing the ebbs and flows. Like, there are days where I'll be hyper productive. I can do more in a day than I could in a week just because I'm in the zone. It makes sense. The energy's there. And other days where it's just like, can't
Yeah.
structure a sentence. And like, being able to be okay with that is a challenge. Yeah. And it's something I'm working towards getting better at.
I have faith you will, and you're doing really well anyway. Just talking about it, and where you've come from is, and what you've achieved is amazing. And do you have an idea or anything you can share of what's going to be coming next for your business?
So, a little thing that we're going to be launching really, really soon. So I won a competition to go to the baby and toddler show in Scotland, which was amazing. But it was really last minute. They gave me like a couple of days notice, uh, which is
When
great
you're a
when
mum,
you're my mum.
right?
Yeah, I was like, it's in Scotland and my son is 2, and it was on the Easter weekend, and I was like, and I've lost a couple of working days. It's the weekend afterwards to actually prep for this baby and toddler show. When I was at the show, I had my cards. So for those people who don't know, my Way to Honest cards you get like 64 cards in a pack, and they're basically words of kindness and wisdom and compassion and humor to meet a mum on the good days and the bad days. And I had cards blown up, which were all around like my stand. And people really loved the blown up ones as well. I'm going to
Mm.
show you like one of the favorites that
I'm going to read it for anyone listening. Everyone has an opinion about how you should raise your baby. They can all fuck off, which I love.
Yeah, that one. So I had that on my stand. I considered myself like the rebellious, I'm
Yeah.
surrounded by all these beautiful little baby cots and strollers.
That
And
you
here,
stand out. That is definitely for sure. And I love it because I love that it includes humor. It could so easily just be, another thing that's like we're making motherhood lovely. And it is making it lovely, but it is like, come on, we can laugh at this and the ridiculousness of this.
we have to laugh. And so I had a few people when I was there going, "Can I buy the signs?" So because they didn't want just the little box of cards, they actually wanted the signs. And so I was like, "Yeah, of course you can." And so so I sold a few signs, and again, like,
Making up the cost of
yeah,
them.
yeah, I know. It's really, you're like, yeah, that's yeah, which you do as an entrepreneur. Like,
Yeah.
if some person is like, I will give you my hard-earned money for the thing, you find a way to make that work. And so
Yeah.
I've already sent a couple of signs to Scotland, and clearly there's an interest for it. So, yeah, so my next thing is to sell bigger versions of the cards. And I think it's because it's a really nice reminder. Like people
Mm.
tend to take the small cards and put them on their windows or in their nappy bags, etc. But maybe there's a couple of cards where you're like, I just need to wake up every morning and see that really big on my bedside table that reminds me that everyone can fuck off when I'm having a tough time. So yeah, so that's going to be my next launch. And then I've got a couple of other big ideas kind of in the corner, which I'm excited to make a
By
reality.
the way, genius idea. I also feel you could place it somewhere where your mother-in-law comes to visit and just strategically put it there.
Yeah.
And I pretend a friend sent it to you.
Well, I guess, and it felt rude to not put it up. So there's
Yeah.
actually,
But isn't it true?
yes, there's actually a card. I wish I could access it quickly, but it says, "Ask me what I did today." It's got a long list of things that you do, and then at the bottom it says, "I'm not finished. Turn around," and then you turn around, and there's like lots of other things. And I say, passive aggressively leave this next to your partner's on his side of the bed, or mother-in-laws, or mums, or dad, or whoever you need to have here. So I think, yeah, sometimes maybe just handing someone a card or just leaving it when you're making them a cup of tea,
Yeah.
so they can like look through it and kind of get the message.
I love that. That's genius. Yeah.
Like,
So brilliant. I can't wait to hear more on everything doing. So I've got two more questions. So
yeah.
anyone is listening and found themselves in a situation like you're describing and feeling like, yes, that's me. Or do you have any advice, words of wisdom for them?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the first thing is it's okay to ask for help. It's okay. There's no, I think the cruelest thing we do to people is, we shame them for asking for something that's completely within their right. And like motherhood shouldn't be done on its own. And so I know it's really, really scary to say out loud the thing that maybe is in your head, but actually there are services and there are people who have the skills to help you, but they can't help you until you say something. And so
Yeah.
so knowing it's okay to ask for support. There's whether it's local boroughs have phenomenal crisis teams. So calling a crisis team if you're in a place of crisis, or speaking to your GP who can refer you through to services. The Maternal Mental Health Alliance has a really great symptom checker that they just launched, which is a really great way for people to kind of check in and see how they're doing. And so looking to, places like the Maternal Mental Health Alliance for resources, speaking to your GP, etc. So, and I think the other thing is, I know when you're in the space you're in, it's hard to imagine that you won't be in it. But it's not a forever state. It is a temporary state, and you just need to get through it. But the expectation doing it alone, I think, is unfair. So if you are having a particularly tough time, call emergency services, call your GP, go to the MMHA website, see if the resources on there. But you should never do it alone. Tell someone who loves you, tell a family member, tell a partner, tell someone. Just like make sure you're not holding it yourself. And I know it's actually asking for help, which is the hardest thing, because you're so embarrassed. You're like, I shouldn't be feeling how I'm feeling. But actually, there's a lighter, brighter world that exists out there. But the only way that you can access it is actually by doing the hardest part, which is actually saying, I'm not okay.
Thank you. I no, and it's so true. And it actually, to say it's just a temporary state, like it's not forever, I think is showing your learnings so much. And that's such an important message that I know I could have done with back in the past. So thank you so much for sharing that.
Thing is, you don't believe it, because when you're
No.
in the deep dark hole, whatever that is for you, it doesn't, you think this is your forever, but it's not
Yeah.
your forever. But I can understand. I believed it was my forever. And I think it's just, it's, if anyone's ever had their heart broken, if you've ever been in a relationship with the love of your life, or what you thought and then it didn't work out, and you're like, I will never love again. This is like, but like you do, and
You
you
do.
recover. And all of us, you don't think you get to be an adult without having had really shitty experiences happen to you. And it's horrible when it happens, but eventually you do recover, you do move on, you become greater for it, you become stronger because of it, you become smarter for it. But you have to go through the crap. And that is the reality for, mental health stuff too. Like it's not a forever state, but also I think the expectation that you have to go through it alone is unreasonable, and there are people out there who are really, really want to help. And also the other thing I would just say is, sometimes the system is difficult. Find an advocate, whether it's your partner, whether it's a best friend. Find someone who has the fire that maybe you don't, because I think one of the cruelest things about the system is you're expected to advocate for yourself at a time
Yes.
where you're at your most weakness and most vulnerable, and there's nothing more painful than asking for help and someone not meeting you in that. So go find a badass friend who just knows how to kick ass and just say, please, can you help me? Can you get on the phone with this person, make sure that I'm getting help, and find a fiery ally who can be there for you, whoever that is. Because I think the cruel thing we do is expect women to have to fight for themselves so much energy where you've just got nothing to give. And so I would also find your warrior to stand beside you to help you get that help.
Thank you for that. It's such a valid point. If I was ever to have a baby again, I've already got the person lined up, because I'm like, I might not even need them, but that's my learning, is I could have done with someone to do that for me, because they'll just take you as okay, because that's what we do, isn't it?
Mm.
So that's a beautiful piece of advice, Danielle. We could talk about this all day. Thank you so much for being so generous with your story and helping others through it. And you have found such purpose through the really, really dark times. So thank you for that. And what I'd also love to ask, we like to end this on a bit of joy. We always like to end it, because I'm obsessed with women being allowed to feel joy, find their joy, especially post motherhood, because for me it's been rediscovering my joy of theatre, of dance, and a piece I'd lost. What brings you joy?
I again, in the spirit of honesty, I would say I'm still work in progress on that. I'm still finding it.
Good,
But
good.
yeah,
Work in progress is good.
work in progress is good. Look, as a storyteller, I love great television. Oh my goodness. Like I get high on it.
Yes.
Oh my goodness.
Give
Yes.
me your shows, okay? We had K-drama on today's episode that came out, and I was like, I need to learn more about K-drama. What are your shows, Danielle?
Where my partner and I we're finally, hopefully this week, we're going to watch the final episode of White Lotus. It's so great. We watched Severance
I'm
together.
still on second season, I have to say, so I've got a way to go.
So and we watched Severance, which is just Ben Stiller is just phenomenal the way he puts together that series. It's amazing. So and as someone who really appreciates story, like when I see a creative just being a genius about how they set up the cameras and the colors and I'm just like, I'm high. But actually something really fun that we did last night is in Soho there's a place called The Room Where It Happened.
Stop! I went there last Friday. I didn't know if to say her. I was like, she's not going to say it, is it?
Yeah.
It's so good, isn't it?
Right. And one of the cast from Hamilton was there last night.
No, I'm going to tell my friend. I'm gutted.
Yeah. And so without realizing, he came later in the evening. So for those who don't know, The Room Where It Happens is basically in Soho. It's upstairs and you have food, and your staff are also musical theatre performers and they sing all the hits. But then at 9 o'clock, everyone gathers around the piano.
It's your turn.
It's your turn. And I put in a request earlier for my shot from Hamilton because I absolutely love that. And they didn't play it during dinner. I was like, okay, whatever, that's fine.
Okay, that's a great song. Why wouldn't you?
Yeah, why wouldn't you? And then at 9 o'clock, after maybe about 9:10, some other guy walks in, and then they announce, oh, by the way, and they introduce him, and they're like, he's actually in the cast of Hamilton, and he sings that song, and I am dying because I am singing with a man from Hamilton, and the whole bar just goes completely wild because it's such a good song, and we're all getting into it, and it was just so electric and so lovely. I recorded some of it. I keep playing it because it just was like my happy place. It was
I
so.
can't believe that.
Yeah.
Well done you for doing this today after being in The Room Where It Happens last night and all of that.
Yeah, look, I think spontaneity brings me joy. My husband and I every Wednesday night do date night, and we swap. He'll organize one night, I'll organize. So we surprise each other, and I think that was a really kind of fun thing. And I think the last thing I would say is I used to play tennis when I was younger, and I walked past a tennis court the other day, and something in me moved and went, I think we need to get back on a tennis court. I think when you're playing tennis, you have to be present, you get to be powerful, you get to be competitive, and I think I need to get back on a tennis court. So I think that's
a sign. That was like me in dance. It's like, oh, I think I'm meant to be doing some more of this. And it is that I can't believe you went to The Room Where It Happens. I've never been so excited to hear that on a podcast since it was our first time last week. So I'll see you there in Soho sometime soon, Danielle. Where can people find you if they want to find out more about you and way Too Honest?
Absolutely. So there's a few different things. Definitely follow. There are two different Instagram accounts, but I would start off with Way Too Honest Mom. So that's more of the fun account where I kind of share a little bit more about my entrepreneur journey and what it's like to be a mother, etc. There's also the Way Too Honest Co one, which is just more about the business. And then actually on our website, so waytoohonest.co, not .com, where people can learn about the business and they can buy the cards. It's such a good gift to give to a new mom friend. Or if I tell partners, it's cheaper than therapy. It's a bestie in a box, and it's just something that can give her love and support, words of wisdom, kindness and compassion to make the early years as good as they can be.
I love that. Well, thank you so much. And
Thank
I can't
you.
wait to see you doing more of what you do. It's been an absolute pleasure. So thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for the privilege and for all that you're doing. It was really so lovely.
Thank you so much to Docket for partnering with us on this episode. Don't forget to use the code UPS050 for £5 off your annual subscription and save yourself around £120 a month on household expenses. Search the App Store for DOQIT and use the code UPS050 and go back and listen to my conversation with Docket founder Catherine Ann Reed, Season 3, Episode 19. Thank you so much for listening to Bump to Business Owner. I hope you enjoyed the conversation. Please do rate, review, follow, or subscribe wherever you're listening. It really helps us to connect with more mums and business owners. You can DM me on @BumpToBusinessOwner on Instagram, and I'll be back next week.